Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into some really fascinating, complex shifts happening, right? Where technology, finance, and, well, global politics all collide. We've gathered insights from quite a stack of sources, everything from market analyses, company statements, geopolitical reports, all to bring you the critical nuggets of knowledge. Our mission is basically to give you a clear shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on some of the biggest stories shaping tech right now.
Absolutely. And we're going to be unpacking quite a bit. Everything from, multi-billion-dollar tech acquisitions driven directly by this AI compute gold rush, all the way to the intensifying global competition for the actual semiconductor chips that, power everything. And we'll even explore the, maybe surprising political ambitions of one of tech's really prominent figures. It's a landscape that's changing incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And you'll find there are some truly unexpected connections running through it all.
Okay, let's unpack this first bit then. We're kicking off with some pretty significant M&A news, mergers and acquisitions, and it really highlights this current, gold rush for AI compute power. CoreWeave has agreed to acquire Core Scientific, a massive deal, $9 billion, all stock. Now, what makes this particularly interesting, I think, is that CoreWeave had initially looked at the same asset maybe a year ago, much lower price point then. So patience certainly seems to have paid off for them big time.
Right.
Though, curiously, we have seen Core Scientific shares actually drop since the announcement, which is unusual for an M&A deal, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And what's fascinating here is how this acquisition, it isn't just an isolated event. It really is part of a broader systemic trend.
Mm-hmm.
The core insight that's kind of emerging is that AI isn't just about the clever algorithms or the software anymore. It's fundamentally about the underlying physical stuff, the data centers, the sheer compute power, and crucially, the specialized expertise to deploy and manage it all. We're seeing other companies like Capgemini, a major global consulting firm. They're actively pursuing deals specifically to ramp up their own AI capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Their recent negotiations, they actually stalled for a couple of months. Sources call it tariff drama, basically broader trade issues impacting cross-border deals. But those talks have now resumed, and it just underscores this critical point. There's significant consolidation happening. B2B, consulting, infrastructure companies, they're all scrambling to adapt to the huge impact of AI. It's really a race for physical capacity.
So if it's all boiling down to this underlying infrastructure, this compute power, what does that actually mean for companies that aren't making these massive, multi-billion-dollar acquisitions? Are they just at a fundamental disadvantage now, or are there other ways for them to compete, to leverage AI?
That's an excellent question. Because while the massive acquisitions grab the headlines, the ripple effects are felt everywhere. For companies not buying their own data centers or chip capacity outright, the challenge becomes more about strategy. Strategic partnerships, maybe, or optimizing their existing cloud setups, focusing on hyper-specialized AI software, services that can run on shared resources.
Ah, okay. So finding different angles.
Exactly. It pushes them to be more capital efficient, more innovative in how they access and use compute.
Right.
It also puts more pressure back on the cloud providers, right, to offer even more robust, cost-effective AI-ready infrastructure. Ultimately, every sector is being reshaped by this need for AI, whether you build it, buy it, or just find creative ways to access those foundational capabilities.
Right. From that internal scramble for AI infrastructure. Let's turn our gaze now to the global chessboard, where the very components of AI have become central to this, escalating strategic competition. So let's talk about the chip wars. The clear narrative seems to be the U.S. wanting to restrict China's access to advanced tech, national security concerns cited. Yet maybe surprisingly, we hear reports of Jensen Huang, NVIDIA's CEO, expressing a desire to sell more into China long term. Is that ambition just a fool's dream, given the U.S. stance, or is there a more nuanced way to look at this?
Well, it definitely raises that important question, doesn't it? The tension between corporate interests and national policy. From NVIDIA's perspective, look, it's about revenue. It's about not wanting to lose access to a massive, lucrative market. China's a huge customer base.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Sure, makes sense.
However, the U.S. government's message is pretty clear. This tech has far-reaching military strategic implications. They see it as national security, not just another consumer or even enterprise product. But what's fascinating, from an investor angle, is that some actually see this government control, these restrictions, as, believe it or not, a bullish demand signal.
Really? How so?
The argument goes like this. Advanced AI chips aren't really a consumer technology like, say, Tesla cars or Apple iPhones, which, badly need China's population for volume sales. Instead, these high-end chips are primarily for top-tier enterprise use and this thing called sovereign AI.
Sovereign AI.
Yeah, essentially national-level AI capabilities,
Yeah.
developed and controlled by governments for strategic defense purposes. So the argument is this government-driven demand provides a stable, almost guaranteed market, less susceptible to economic cycles or consumer tastes.
That's a fascinating reframe, okay? But if access to these crucial chips is being restricted for geopolitical reasons, it really begs the question of domestic capacity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How prepared are we here in the U.S., for example, to secure these vital supply chains, to reduce dependency on tech from abroad? Can we bring manufacturing, the expertise, back home?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the U.S. has actually been preparing for this for years now, even before the chip wars got this intense. A key example is TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor, building that huge factory, that fab, in Arizona.
Right. I remember hearing about that.
It's certainly not an overnight project. These are multi-year, multi-billion-dollar investments. So in many ways, we might be more prepared to onshore to keep critical supply chains domestic than you might assume just from the headlines.
Okay.
And on the restriction front, things are tightening further. The White House is apparently set to restrict chip shipments to Malaysia and Thailand now. The idea is to crack down on suspected smuggling routes into China.
Closing loopholes.
It's exactly. It means needing licenses for advanced AI chips from NVIDIA, AMD, others. A clearer, more direct enforcement mechanism. And this move is specifically seen by some analysts as a glimpse of what would replace the previous administration's AI diffusion rule, which was maybe a bit broader. More broadly, you've got these sectoral terrorist investigations potentially looming for semiconductors. The whole U.S.-China trade relationship remains, a fragile truce, especially around critical materials like rare earths, other export controls.
Right.
And it's also worth noting, kind of a side point, but relevant, that some measures in a recent big legislative package informally dubbed the Big Beautiful Bill by some, measures that would have supported sustainable demand for, say, nascent U.S. rare earth projects, funding for solar, wind. Those were unfortunately stripped out during the process,
Interesting.
which could impact the long-term domestic supply chain for those materials, too. It just underscores how deeply tangled technology, national security, global economics really are. Creates ripples everywhere.
Definitely. Okay, let's pivot now. Let's talk about a figure who consistently commands attention, whose recent moves are sending ripples, not just through Silicon Valley, but Wall Street and beyond. Elon Musk. He's just announced the formation of the America Party, a new political party. And this has sent shockwaves, apparently impacting Tesla's stock, which is down significantly this year already. Even former President Trump weighed in, calling the whole idea of a third party ridiculous. Expert, what's been the immediate reaction from the investment community to this political move?
Well, what's fascinating here is just how visceral the investor reaction has been. It's not just political commentary, right?
Yeah.
It's translated into a very real financial concern about distraction, about focus. We had a prominent investor, James Fishback, CEO of Azoria, go so far as to write a very direct, open letter right to Tesla's board, explicitly demanding clarity on Musk's full-time obligation to the company. Azoria even publicly delayed a planned $1 billion investment in Tesla. Why? Because, as Fishback put it, the CEO is putting personal political ambitions ahead of his obligations. End of cut. And he added this is to the detriment of shareholders. Then he stressed, very pointedly, quote, he does not own Tesla. We do.
Oof, that's blunt.
It really captures the level of, exasperation some shareholders seem to be feeling.
So the shareholder message seems crystal clear. Focus on Tesla. The argument being Musk's time, his energy, should be laser focused on the actual companies. Groundbreaking tech like Optimus robots, Robotaxi, the new Model Y rollout. Not political campaigning. But I wonder, given how intertwined his businesses are with government contracts, regulations, how much of this political stuff is truly a choice for him versus maybe an inevitability?
Yeah, and if you connect that to the bigger picture, it's often argued that his deep ties, Department of Defense, NASA through SpaceX, Tesla's reliance on environmental credits, regulatory frameworks.
Yeah.
It does make his political involvement seem almost, an inevitability, as you say.
Yeah.
He's maybe less the day-to-day key inventor these days and more the key spokesperson, the political navigator for these huge, heavily regulated ventures. He kind of has to engage with policy.
Yeah.
But this new political venture, it also comes at a really challenging time for Tesla itself. The company is potentially facing its first ever sales decline,
Hmm.
an aging product mix, significant new competition, especially from Chinese companies that are innovating fast.
That timing is definitely not ideal.
No. And analysts generally agree. Look, regardless of your personal politics, this kind of highly public, potentially polarizing political move is seen as a drag on the company. It just adds an unnecessary layer of risk, perceived distraction impacting the stock.
It really makes you think, doesn't it,
Yeah.
about the unique risks when a public company is so closely tied to one individual's personal ambitions, and what that means, not just for its future, but for how the broader market sees leadership, corporate governance. Wow, okay. What a deep dive into these complex currents shaping our tech landscape today. We've navigated that intense demand for AI compute driving major M&A, explored the high-stakes global chip competition, its geopolitical side,
Yeah.
and examined this intriguing intersection of Elon Musk's political ambitions with Tesla's performance.
Indeed. And what we've discussed today, I think it really highlights how interconnected these things are, even if they seem disparate at first glance. The future of tech isn't just about innovation in some kind of vacuum, right?
Uh-huh.
It's profoundly influenced by global politics, by the resilience of our supply chains, and yeah, even by the personal actions of these highly influential figures.
Absolutely. So for you, our listener, perhaps the key takeaway from all this is that staying truly well-informed means understanding these broader connections, not just chasing the individual headline. And maybe it invites us all to consider this. As technology leaders become increasingly influential on the world stage, with personal and corporate interests often overlapping, how will we as a society maybe redefine that line between corporate responsibility and individual political expression? It's a huge question, and one that will undoubtedly shape the tech landscape for years to come.